I was halfway through a cappuccino at my corner table in the little cafe across from my apartment when my phone buzzed. A group text from my cousin Ashley. It wasn't meant for me. A picture popped up, long table, white tablecloth, polished silverware. The caption, "Family dinner tonight. Can't wait to see everyone. Everyone. Except me." The same way it's been for the last 5 years. Ever since that night. I set my cup down carefully, watching the foam slide against the porcelain. Outside, New York's late autumn wind whipped red leaves down the sidewalk. I smoothed the sleeve of my silk blouse, habit, not vanity, and took a slow breath. I had learned over time that I didn't need their approval to breathe, or to live, or to win. Still, my chest tightened. Old memories have a way of slipping past the armor you build. I could almost hear my aunt's clipped tone, see my mother's eyes avoiding mine. But that was years ago. And today, I had something they didn't know. In the bottom of my bag, tucked into a slim leather wallet, was my black card. The one they'd never believe I could have. I didn't know yet if I'd use it tonight. But part of me was already picturing the look on their faces. 5 years ago, I was a different woman. Back then, I was just Emma Carter, the girl who worked double shifts at a bookstore and still had to borrow gas money from her parents. It was the night before Thanksgiving, when everything broke. We were all at my mother's house, the kind of evening where the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon pies filled every corner, and every chair in the dining room was occupied. My brother, Ryan, had just announced his promotion at the bank, and the table erupted in applause. Then my Aunt Linda turned to me. "So, Emma," she said, her smile tight as a ribbon on a gift you didn't want. "Still figuring things out?" I swallowed. "I've been working on a startup idea. It's small, but—" "Oh, honey," she interrupted, shaking her head like she was swatting a fly. "You're 30. You need stability, not pipe dreams." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough. My father didn't say a word. My mother stared down at her plate. And then Ryan, with his glass of wine in hand, added, "Maybe you should skip tomorrow's dinner. Just until you get on your feet." My throat burned. I remember gripping the edge of the table, my knuckles pale, willing myself not to cry. The silver fork in front of me looked sharper than it ever had. That's when I felt a soft touch on my wrist. My grandmother, the only person at that table who saw me, slid her gold bracelet into my palm under the tablecloth. "You'll know what to do with this when the time comes," she whispered. I left before dessert. No goodbyes. No hugs. The next morning, I packed my bags. I didn't have much. 2 suitcases, my laptop, and that bracelet. I promised myself I'd never walk into a room where I had to shrink to fit. I didn't know how I'd survive in New York, but I knew I'd rather starve chasing my own dream than be fed with pity. That was the night they stopped inviting me to family dinners. And the night I stopped asking for a seat at their table. New York was cruel at first. The apartment I found was a 5th-floor walk-up with cracked plaster walls and a window that barely closed. In the winter, I slept in 2 sweaters and a scarf. My office was a rickety kitchen table pushed against the radiator. I took whatever work I could get, data entry for a law firm, late-night shifts at a coffee shop, ghostwriting blog posts for people who barely read them. During the day, I poured every free hour into my startup idea, a niche online platform for independent artisans to sell their handmade goods without the crushing fees of big marketplaces. Most nights, I fell asleep at my laptop, my fingers still hovering over the keys. Some mornings, I woke up to the glow of the screen and the sound of garbage trucks outside. The turning point came when I met Julia Price. She was a sharp, silver-haired entrepreneur. I served cappuccino to 3 mornings in a row. On the 4th, she asked what I was always typing so furiously before dawn. I told her. Instead of smiling politely and walking away, she pulled up a chair. "Show me." Julia became my first investor, mentor, and unshakable cheerleader. She taught me how to pitch, how to negotiate, how to survive a boardroom full of men who didn't expect me to know what EBITDA was. It wasn't easy. I lost deals. I faced weeks where the numbers didn't add up, and I thought about giving in. But every time I faltered, I'd remember the feel of my grandmother's bracelet against my skin. And then, The wins started stacking up. First, a small write-up in an online magazine. Then our first major seller joining the platform. Then a big client that tripled our traffic overnight. 2 years after launching, we turned a profit. 3 years in, I was sitting across from a private banker who slid a sleek black envelope toward me. Inside was my black card. Heavy, cool to the touch. A symbol that I'd crossed a threshold I'd once thought impossible. But I didn't post about it. Didn't call home. My family's calls were rare anyway, and when they came, the questions were casual, surface level. You doing okay? Finding work. I'd answer with a smile they couldn't see. I'm doing fine. I told myself my silence was protection, that I didn't need to prove anything to people who'd written me off. And yet every time I slipped that black card into my wallet, I thought about the look on their faces if they knew. I didn't plan to show them. Until tonight. I wasn't going to go. I told myself it would be petty, childish even, to walk into that dinner. But by 6:15, I found myself in front of the restaurant, the cold November air biting through my coat. Through the glass, I could see them. My mother's neat bob of chestnut hair, Ryan leaning back in his chair like he owned the place, Aunt Linda's oversized scarf draped dramatically over one shoulder. They were all laughing. For a moment, I hesitated. My pulse thrummed in my ears. I could turn around. No one would know. But then I felt the weight of my wallet in my bag. The cool edge of the black card pressed against my fingers. My grandmother's bracelet was on my wrist, warm from my skin. I walked in. The sound of the door chime made heads turn. The laughter slowed, then stopped altogether. Emma, my mother said, her voice thin, uncertain. Hi, Mom. I smiled, sliding off my coat. Thought I'd drop by. Aunt Linda's lips parted just enough to let out a barely audible, "Oh." Ryan cleared his throat. We didn't. Think you were coming. Clearly. I took the empty chair at the far end of the table, the one the waiter scrambled to set for me. The conversation picked up again, though it was stiffer now. I sipped water, listening, studying them. They hadn't changed much. Same small jabs disguised as jokes, same tendency to speak over each other. But I also caught something else, a flicker of curiosity, of discomfort. Halfway through the main course, the waiter appeared with the bill, placing the leather folder discreetly in the center of the table. Ryan reached for it. All right, we'll split. I've got it, I said, my voice even. 7 pairs of eyes turned toward me. It's fine, Emma, my mother said quickly. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I reached into my bag, slid the black card out, and placed it neatly on top of the bill. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Aunt Linda's brows knit together. Is that? Yes. I met her gaze. It's mine. No one spoke. The waiter picked it up with both hands, as if it were something delicate. I've done well, I said, the words rolling out steady and measured. Better than you might think. The platform I started, it's now in 3 countries. We've doubled revenue in the last year. And I own every share. Ryan's mouth opened, then closed again. My mother blinked rapidly, like she was trying to catch up to what she'd just heard. I'm not telling you this to brag, I continued. I just think it's time you knew that I didn't fall apart when I left. I built something. I became someone. Silence clung to the table like a heavy fog. The waiter returned, setting the receipt in front of me for signature. I scribbled my name, slid the card back into my wallet, and stood. Enjoy the rest of your night. I left them there, staring after me, faces a mix of shock, shame, and something else I couldn't quite place. I didn't go home right away. I walked 2 blocks to a quiet wine bar, ordered a glass of Malbec, and let the warmth sink into me. My phone buzzed before I'd taken the second sip. First a text from my mother, "Can we talk?" Then from Ryan, "You didn't have to do that." And finally from Ashley, my cousin. That was badass. I smiled at that last one. The next morning I agreed to meet them. Not all at once, separately. If we were going to have any chance of a truce, it couldn't be in a room where they fed off each other's old narratives. I met my mother first at her kitchen table. She poured coffee, hands trembling slightly. "Emma, I'm sorry. I should have defended you back then. I didn't realize how badly I hurt you. I know, I said softly, but I can't just erase the past. If we're going to have a relationship, I need honesty. And I need you to stop pretending my life only has value if it looks like Ryan's. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Ryan was next. We met in a park, the November air biting at our ears. He tried to laugh it off, but I stopped him. You told me to stay away until I got on my feet. I did that. Now, if you want me in your life, I need respect. No more passive-aggressive digs. No more comparing me to your idea of success. He kicked at the gravel, but eventually he nodded. Aunt Linda was the toughest. She invited me to lunch, still wrapped in that oversized scarf. I misjudged you, she admitted. You did, I said, holding her gaze. And if you want to make it right, maybe start by supporting someone in the family who's struggling now. Use your influence for more than criticism. One by one, I set my terms, boundaries that weren't up for negotiation. No more exclusion. No more diminishing someone because their path looks different. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure the cycle ended here. By the end of the week, the group text started looking different. Invitations had my name in them again. And when I declined, no one questioned it. They were learning. Slowly. But learning. 3 months later, I found myself at another family dinner. This time, my name was on the guest list before the first reservation was made. The atmosphere was different. Still familiar in some ways, the clink of cutlery, the aroma of rosemary chicken, but the undercurrent had shifted. Ryan asked questions about my business without sarcasm. My mother introduced me to a friend at the next table as my daughter, the CEO. Even Aunt Linda managed a compliment, though it came wrapped in her usual dramatic tone. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But there was effort. Halfway through dessert, Ashley leaned over and whispered, I think they're scared of you now. I laughed, shaking my head. Good. Maybe scared enough to think before they speak. Later, as I gathered my things, my mother stopped me at the door. Your grandmother would be proud, she said, her voice steady. The words landed deep. When I got home, I slipped off my coat and sat at my desk. The gold bracelet, her bracelet, caught the lamplight. I traced its delicate links with my thumb, remembering the way she'd slid it into my hand that night, telling me I'd know what to do with it when the time came. I realized then the black card moment wasn't the real victory. It wasn't paying for their dinner or watching their jaws drop. The real victory was that I'd built a life on my own terms, and now I could stand in any room, even one that once shut me out, without shrinking. I fastened the bracelet around my wrist again, not as a reminder of the past, but as a marker of the woman I'd become. We don't always get to choose the tables we're invited to, but we can always choose the ones we sit at and the ones we own. They banned me from the family dinner, but in the end, I picked up the check and kept the seat that truly mattered, my own.